Daniel Holtzclaw's defense team is drilling deep holes in the claims of many of his 13 accusers.
There are so many incentives to make up a story and accuse a law enforcement officer of inappropriate, illegal, or monstrous behavior.
Holtzclaw himself telling me he was set up.
I believe the lead detective had a vendetta out for me. They were using me as an scapegoat. We can say, hey, Oklahoma City's doing our job.
Pointing out several women had changed their stories and given an inaccurate description of him.
I was characterized as a black male.
He's black. He's okay. He's black male.
No, I was characterized as a Mexican.
We have brown skin, like a Mexican.
I'm characterized with blonde hair. You can look at my photo lineup, but the essential tool for a detective, no one can pick me on the phone lineup.
Another accuser testified under the influence of PCP.
And yet the judge allowed this? How is this possible?
He was branded a predator by prosecutors, but Daniel Holtzclaw prided himself on being a good cop.
I'm here as his brother saying that that is not the way that he operates.
What about Daniel friending an accuser on Facebook?
All I've ever wanted to do was basically just check up and say, hey, you doing okay? You know, I know you're a good person. Just please stay out of trouble.
And the defense vigorously challenged the prosecution's GPS link to Holtzclaw.
He was there. He was doing his job. It wasn't a case where they were able to track him around doing his sinister behavior. He was patrolling. He never denied any of the locations that they said they were at.
And oftentimes the defense claims the GPS was inaccurate.
It can be off by as much as 1,200 feet.
Take the case of Sherry Ellis, the woman who claimed her rapist was a shorter black man.
Not only is he not a short black man, but his own GPS shows that he did drive through that area, but it shows he never stopped his car.
The defense pointed out, how is he supposed to be sexually assaulting a victim in the back seat when the vehicle is moving the entire time?
The defense knew its toughest challenge, however, was that speck of skin cell DNA inside and out of Daniel Holtzclaw's uniform zipper area.
When they found a match and it was a 17-year-old girl, it was a shocking moment.
Adara Gardner claims she was raped on her mother's front porch. But listen to what Gardner's mother told police.
What did your daughter tell you?
She said, I met this really hot cop. He told me I had a couple warrants, but he said, don't worry about it. Give me his number and we're going to go out on dates. She's really nice and he is sexy.
Holtzclaw doesn't deny questioning Adara Gardner, but his team insists there was no sexual contact. So how do they explain the skin cell DNA match?
The amount of these skin cells were completely consistent with transfer, secondary touch transfer.
It's called transfer or touch DNA. Brian Bates explains.
If Daniel pats somebody down, especially a young lady who's wearing a midriff shirt, then he goes through her purse where her combs are, where all these things are, her DNA gets on his hands. Then at any point during a 14-hour shift, if he uses the restroom, if he adjusts himself, if he changes clothes, he's going to come into contact with his fly.
Which would explain, according to the defense, how Gardner's DNA transferred to Holtzclaw's pants. But here is where the defense believes it has its best chance of appeal. In closing arguments, Holtzclaw's team accuses the prosecutor of making a glaring error of fact, detrimental to Holtzclaw's case.
He asserts that the DNA came from quote-unquote vaginal fluid from Adara, and that it could only have gotten there by a sexual assault.
Holtzclaw's defense team claims that was never proven.
I think that's going to be a major contention point for the appellate process. He absolutely said vaginal discharge or vaginal fluid in court, and the bottom line is there's not much of a test for that sort of fluid, and even if there is a test, it wasn't done in this case.
The other glaring proof of an unfair trial, according to the defense, jury intimidation.
36 counts! We want life!
What was the biggest injustice at trial?
The biggest ones that I saw was the circus-type atmosphere in trial, the chanting out in the hallways, down below.
How many women does it take? Our daughters! Our daughters!
Holtzclaw's team denounced the public spectacle of high-profile lawyers descending on Oklahoma City in the summer of Ferguson, civil rights lawsuits in hand.
Michelle Malkin says money is an incentive.
This is a lottery, and they're waiting for their jackpot.
We want nothing less than life.
If people were at the courtroom hearing the chants, racist cop, give them life, give them life. The judge even made an announcement saying to basically just ignore it.
There was absolute jury intimidation, and we don't have to guess that.
Finally, after 6 grueling weeks of testimony, the jury went into 4 days of intense and often heated deliberation.
Was fined as follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years.
In the end, finding the former officer guilty of exactly half of the 36 charges and recommending an astounding 263 years behind bars. It happened also to be Daniel's birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
While supporters of the victims rejoiced, Holtzclaw cried and mouthed to jurors and his anguished family, "I didn't do this." Despite the verdict, his family members tell me they have not lost faith.
What has this done to your family?
I mean, it's torn us apart. I mean, we're still fighting together, but it's torn us up in our hearts because we know that Daniel is innocent.
The jury acquitted Daniel in 5 of the 13 cases, including Shardarian Hill, who said she was raped in a hospital bed, and Carla Raines, who 7 times denied she had been assaulted before changing her story. The jury did convict Holtzclaw in 8 cases, including Janie Liggins, where the only evidence was her word in a grainy visual of the traffic stop. They also believed 17-year-old Adara Gardner, whose DNA was on Daniel's fly.
Well, I mean, I'm not a DNA expert. They told us it was DNA from the vaginal fluid from a 17-year-old. The DNA people are pretty boring, to be honest with you.
In the case of Sherry Ellis, who said her attacker was short and black, and the GPS did not match her story, Holtzclaw was convicted on all counts. On Ellis's case alone, Holtzclaw got 63 years. Tabitha Barnes, who testified on PCP, Holtzclaw was convicted on 3 of 5 counts.
Sometimes you wonder, I mean, with the stuff you hear, did we get it right? I mean, honestly, I think we did.
Is this how the criminal justice system is supposed to work in America? Why is it that they just sort of picked and chose who to believe, not based on the evidence or the facts?
We took it count by count, went over it, discussed it, guilty or not guilty, and put it in a pile. We didn't split the baby.
Some jurors admitted they were concerned by the outside disruptions, but Speaks insists it did not impact their verdict.
The subject was never breached that if we don't find him guilty, there's going to be riots like Ferguson.
For Daniel Holtzclaw, his only hope is a favorable appeal, one based on a number of issues, including the subject of misrepresented DNA, what they call the circus atmosphere, and disruptions that pervaded throughout the trial, an unconstitutionally excessive sentence, in a jury that the defense says didn't look at each count on its separate merit.
How far will you go to get your brother a new trial?
I always said I will not give up, and until the whole world hears my outcry, I will keep on going. I will never give up fighting for Daniel.